Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this morning's Climate Change and Sustainability Committee on the 27th of May 2026. Can I just start off with introducing the top table? Councillor Liz Barrett to my far left, your right, Vice Convener of the committee. We've got Fraser Croft, the Strategic Lead for Environment and Infrastructure. Myself, Councillor Richard Waters, Convener of this committee. We've got Adam Taylor from Democratic Services on my right. Then we've got Matt Davis. Got Matt Davis, who's going to be doing the first paper. Carolyn Morley, who's also on the first paper, and Neil Moran, the team lead for that project. I will now ask Adam to confirm any apologies received and to advise the members of in attendance and them online.
Thanks, Convener, and morning, members. We've had one apology this morning from Councillor Kogali, but we have Councillor Braun substituting. Councillor Braun, can you just confirm that you're in the meeting?
Yes, good morning, Adam. Good morning, all. I'm here.
Thank you. And Councillor Grant Stewart, you're also online?
Present.
Thank you. All other members are present in the chambers, with exception of Councillor Lang, who I believe is just running a bit late and will be on his way, and has in fact just walked in. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Can I just ask if people can just use the chat box or put your hands up if you're in the room to get my attention if you have any questions, comments, or amendments going forward. Can I ask if there are any declarations of interest, if any declaration of interest in line with any of the papers that are coming forward this morning? Nothing online either. Thank you very much for that. Can we agree the minute from our last meeting on the 18th of February 2026? David?
Thank you. In the paper on planting trees, there was a commitment to produce a paper on tree maintenance, and that doesn't seem to be noted in the minute. So could I ask that be included, please?
Thanks for spotting that, David, and we'll make sure that's included in the minute.
Thank you.
On to our first item on the agenda, the mobility strategy. Can I ask Matt Davis, the lead officer for mobility strategy, to introduce the report?
Thank you, Convener. This report seeks to note the progress on the delivery of the mobility strategy, 15-year strategy, which was approved at this committee in October 2024. It seeks your approval for a monitoring and evaluation plan, revised action plan, and to commence engagement on mobility strategy action 2 relating to Perth Transport Futures City Centre. The mobility strategy contributes towards the changes we want to see, as defined by the strategy's 11 objectives. For example, reducing transport's carbon emissions and improving air quality. It's delivered by teams across the council and by external agencies that we collaborate with, such as TACTRAN, Network Rail and Transport Scotland, and is coordinated within the council by the Mobility Strategy Working Group. The proposed monitoring and evaluation plan defines how we are tracking the delivery of actions and also the indicators that we will use to tell whether and to what extent changes are going in the desired direction. A revised action plan is presented, which has rationalised the number of actions, sharpening our focus for delivery. For example, by merging actions where overlaps have been identified. Over the past 18 months, we've made good progress delivering the strategy. Highlights include securing external funding for additional electric vehicle charging points, significant expansion of 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, and the review of options for bus network provision as part of our transport transformation project. Significant milestones have also been passed on Perth Transport Futures, with the opening of the Destiny Bridge and New Kingsway, and the Bertha Park Link Road nearing completion. The focus now moves to the final phase, looking at city centre improvement, for which a feasibility study has been completed. Traffic modelling shows changes to Perth transport networks to reduce through traffic and enhance sustainable transport options are broadly feasible, i.e. they can be made without significant negative impacts on traffic flow. We are recommending this committee approves engagement on the key principles underpinning Perth Transport Futures City Centre over the next 12 months in order to shape and refine it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt. Do we have any questions on this? Bob, you're first.
Thanks, convener. Firstly, I'll have to apologise. Obviously, I don't sit on this committee on a regular basis, so the question I'm asking, I've got two questions actually, but I'll come back to them later. They may have already been discussed, so I apologise for that. But looking at the paper, I'm reading it through, and I may have got the wrong end of the stick here to say, but it seems to me that which seems on one hand's fighting, the other hand, on the one hand, we're looking to encourage people to go into electric vehicles. We've got the infrastructure to put more chargers in. We know prices are dropping, batteries are getting better. So we're seeing an encouragement to switch. And I looked at up this morning, and I think the figure we talk about electric vehicle percentage is 2.8 in the paper. I understand that's 5.8, so there's a steady rise. So on the one hand, we're encouraging people to switch to electric vehicles, which are obviously non-emission, which is fine. That's okay. On the other hand, we're trying to change routes to make buses have priority. I don't quite understand where we're going here, because if we're going to have more bus priority routes, we're going to have problems with car traffic. But we're encouraging people to switch from petrol, fossil fuel cars to electric. So we seem to be at loggerheads. I mean, maybe I've got it the wrong end of the stick, convener, obviously, because I'm an outsider looking in. But I just want to make a bit of clarification on where we're going here, because if the Dunkeld corridor is going to be blocked with bus priority, where are the cars going to go? That's what I don't follow. Cars which will now be electric.
Matt.
Thanks for that question, and really good to have some fresh eyes on the strategy as well. So thanks for that. Yeah, in terms of electric vehicles, I mean, we're talking about changing the way they're powered, which is really important for climate change. So a lot of the things in the strategy look to have a balanced approach to all modes of transport. So when you come to things like the Dunkeld Road, we're not proposing to block the Dunkeld Road to traffic, simply reallocate some of the space to make buses flow better while maintaining traffic flow. And that's a similar principle we're adopting to the city centre. We want to improve sustainable options, but use traffic modelling to check and refine what the effects are on traffic flow, because we know that, you know, a large number of people will continue to use cars for their day-to-day journeys. So the solutions are either move to more sustainable modes of transport, or you can, as an individual, switch to electric vehicles, or ideally both. So I think the traffic modelling is the key to your answer there, and we are investing in in-house capability for panoramic traffic modelling. Dunkeld Road project is currently going through traffic modelling to look at the interactions between buses and cars. And the city centre work is underpinned by traffic modelling to make sure that traffic can still flow, and where there may be, for example, in parts of the city centre, capacity identified to reallocate to other modes, that it's not negatively impacting the overall transport networks. So it's kind of a balanced approach with it.
Okay, thank you for that, and thank you for diplomatically covering my ignorance there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Grant, you have a point of clarification.
It was just to clarify for Bob, really, that buses are moving to electric vehicles as well. So there's actually helps decrease the amount of fossil fuel pollution. So having more space for buses doesn't increase it at all, because as we said, most of the bus companies are moving towards electric vehicles, especially in the towns, and now moving out towards coming into towns as well. So maybe get just clarification if I'm correct with my assumptions, please.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yes,
I think
yes, you're
that's-
correct. Buses are moving towards increasingly electric-powered vehicles. We know that most of Perth City Stagecoach buses are now electric, and a lot of the interurban buses through companies like Ember are now electric, and we expect that trend to continue in the future.
Thank you. Thank you. David, you've got two questions. The first one, please.
First one, you mentioned the 20-mile-an-hour zones. It's been paused in Almdana, Strathay and Blairgowrie in the Glens. Is there any update on when these are likely to be completed?
I'm afraid I don't have that information to hand. I'm aware we're about 3/4 of the way through implementation, but I can come back to you on that.
Just Fraser's going to answer that one.
That working now? Yeah. So the programme is continuing through the traffic and network team. My understanding is that the final 3 wards will be completed within the coming months, I think post-summer period.
Thank you. Grant Stewart.
Thank you, convener. My question's on 5.11 in the paper, and there's reference made to mobility strategy in our towns and villages. And I was just wondering, when we're talking about the focus on the Perth city centre, what weighting is given to that project, and how do we connect our rural towns and villages to the city?
Matt, over to you for this one.
Can I just clarify then? Are you looking to know what the priority of the other towns and villages relative to the city centre?
Sorry, no. I was just wondering what kind of weighting, while you're developing the Perth City plan, about how do we have the mobility links to our outlying areas? Is there some weighting in consideration while you're developing the city centre plan, linking Blairgowrie, Crieff, Kinross, as an example for these mobility corridors?
I mean, in terms of connecting outlying settlements, the public transport element of that is being taken forward through the Transport Transformation Project in terms of what changes it could be to the bus network. I don't think there's a specific priority process in terms of which corridors we do at what stage in terms of connecting city centre and outlying settlement.
Okay, but I was also thinking about active travel, like wheeled or walking path networks, and parking out with the city, where people have got the ability to use the aforementioned electric buses in the town.
Oh, I see, right. Well, in terms of active travel, we're just about to start the development of a new active travel strategy, and that will have within it a proposal for path networks, both the existing and proposals for new ones, such as you mentioned Blairgowrie. You know, it's likely that links between Blairgowrie and its nearby settlements will be included in that plan. So, and within that, I mean, the work's at a fairly early stage yet, but there will be a prioritisation process as to which new path connections get taken forward at which stage. There is a tool that we're going to refer to that looks at the demand, the potential demand for things like cycling, and that will be one of the things that we use to help us prioritise new paths where we think there's going to be a high demand between settlements. We may seek to prioritise them for delivery sooner than ones where we think there'll be less demand.
Okay, Grant?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Right. Jack, your first question.
Thank you, convener. You mentioned at the start, obviously, that this is following on from some of the infrastructure work that's been completed with the, for example, the Cross Tay Road link, and it's following on from Councillor Stewart's question. In terms of the significant active travel that's been now put in place with some of this new infrastructure, there is a real opportunity, as Councillor Stewart mentioned, to enhance the connectivity from outlying rural districts, utilising that new infrastructure and extending it from the Cross Tay Road link into the city centre. I'm thinking particularly in my own ward from the A93, linking from the Cross Tay Road link and also from the A90, A94, as well. And can I just ask that as part of the active travel work that's going to be done, that significant consideration is given to that, please?
Yes, we'll definitely be looking to connect up the existing infrastructure on the Cross Tay Link Road for active travel with other new routes. There is a feasibility study that's going to be underway soon looking at going to the city centre. And in terms of north of the Cross Tay Link Road, there's recently been a new path developed between the Cross Tay Link Road and Perth Airport. And then in terms of the city centre, yes, as part of Perth Transport Future City Centre, the starting point for the active travel network in the city centre was the former Perth Cycle Network Master Plan. That was used as the starting point for the kinds of routes that we would put into the city centre and connect to outlying settlements. And that was fed into the traffic model and the whole process. So there will be, when we get through to the end of that, there will be a network plan for the city centre. But I can't say precisely which streets there will be active travel on at this stage, because we need to do engagement and further planning. But definitely, I know you're interested in the kind of A93, A94, but obviously the Dunkeld Road corridor will be another one that's being developed. And there's also work underway on the Glasgow Road corridor that kind of links into the Perth Innovation Highway in terms of active travel. So there are a number of projects, and I think the active travel and the kind of engagement from Perth Transport Futures, when we bring that together, we'll be able to produce a clear plan out at the end of that process of what the network is going to look like.
Jack, do you want
Yeah.
to supplement?
Can I just follow up that? I think, certainly from my perspective as a ward councillor, one of the fundamental elements of the Cross Tay Road link was essentially opening up development for housing, in the east side of Perth, and significant housing along the corridors of the A93 and A94. So I think, having that sort of, reflection on the opportunities around increase, potential use by residents as the benefits of the Cross Tay link rise, to put that infrastructure in advance of significant population increase would be welcome. And specifically, the A93 is a.
You do have a wee question in here, Jack, don't you?
It was a comment with regards to
your comments. Thank you, Jack. Ken.
Thank you, convener. Jack kind of half asked my question anyway, so I'll just ask the other half. I'm very commendable all the work you've done towards cycling in the city as well. I think we're halfway there to this being a properly cyclable city. So I particularly the questions you're asking. My specific question was regarding in the action plan number 36, which is exploring e-bike share schemes. What's your kind of timescale for that, and what's your thoughts as to whether we get something like that in Perth? Thanks.
So there's quite a short-term action in the climate change action plan to look at transport sharing schemes such as bike share, but also car clubs. So that's something that I'm going to be looking at over the next couple of months, doing some scoping work on that. In terms of e-bike share, you might have noticed the schemes in Glasgow and Edinburgh being successful and launched recently. Now they're, as I understand it, they're concessions that the council allows to be run in the city. So I'd be looking to speak to operators and see what steps need to be taken to get that underway. But really, we haven't done any work on that just yet, but it is something we're going to do over the next couple of months.
Thank you. Thank you. Grant Lane.
Thanks, convener. Yeah, obviously there's a lot of really good work in within the papers and aspirations within it as well. But a lot of this is going to involve changing behaviours that are well entrenched from within the city. People that live within the city as well. But also only a third of the population lives in the city, and we want to make it the destination for the other 2/3. So when you're going to consultation and feedback, how do you weight the wishes of the people who live within the city against the people who we wish to travel in and use the city as a hub? Because every action that you take here will have a reaction, and I'll be interested to know how you can make the city a nicer place to move around, whilst also people wanting to come into the city and find an easier way around it. So I was just wondering how you weight the two possibly slightly different attitudes to what should be happening in the city centre.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we'll have to look at what the feedback is from the respective groups at the time, because we don't know what that's going to be, but it has been highlighted to us that we shouldn't be proposing things for people coming in that would hinder people who live here moving around and getting out. So we're very much aware of those issues. Be interesting to see if we can differentiate out the views of those two different groups, but without the information yet, I don't know what that's going to be.
Thank you. I'm aware that people have got second questions, but Andrew hasn't had one yet, so I'm going to go to him first.
Thank you very much, Convener. I'm delighted to see that the Bertha Park Link Road, if that's its correct name, is due to open shortly. And I hope that, if you like, in all our evaluation of the city centre plan in due course, if you like, allows sufficient time to base our evidence on, if you like, the developed use of the Bertha Park Link Road, so that people have got used to it and are using it, and, if you like, the evidence that we go forwards with the city centre plan fully incorporates mature usage of the Bertha Park Link Road, if you like. Thanks.
Yes, in terms of the modelling for the Perth Transport Future City Centre, that did include the Crosstay Link Road and the Kingsway. I'm not sure whether it has yet included the Bertha Park Link Road. I'm going to pass over to Neon.
Yeah, in terms of the data that was captured within the modelling, that does, as Matt says, it does include the post Crosstay Link Road flows, and we are doing some monitoring at the moment pre Bertha Park Link. And once that's open, we'll do some further surveys, and that will be used to validate the model, because there is a scenario that includes the Bertha Park Link, but it would be good to validate that with real data and check the assumptions that have been made in terms of routing and usage.
Thanks. If I may, it's good to hear that. I hope there will be, if you like, surveying of usage of the Bertha Park Link Road right from the start, so that you have a good understanding of when you've reached steady state on it, and we know what it's contributing fully to traffic patterns. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. On to second questions. Bob, did you have a second question?
Yes, Camilla, thanks very much. That's good of you to remember. I was going to put a Q in again. Yeah, my question relates back to the to the actual engagement program, the questions, and my query was really, well, two parts really. Do the final consultation document, does that come back to committee to approve it? That was my first question. And the second part is, my thoughts were that the questions tend to be a little bit leading. I thought, you know, the phrase, to what extent do you agree or disagree, is somewhat leading. It would be easier to say, do you agree or disagree? I think that to what extent tends to lead people. It's not just this survey. You know, I've noticed many others in the past. We have a tendency to word things a different way without being clean cut. And I just wonder if there'll be an ultimate question near the end. Do you agree with the plan or not?
I think possibly two parts to that. But I think
yes, there is.
I don't know. I don't know if Matt's if
First
Matt's
bit's the easy bit, I
the
think.
second bit, but and I don't know if Serge wants to come in with the first part of that, or if you're able to answer it, Matt.
Well, in terms of the wording of the questions, yes, I mean, to what extent is a fairly standard way that the types of scales that get used for that would go from strongly agree, neutral, down to disagree, strongly disagree. So that's why the to what extent wording would be used, because we want to see the level of agreement. I think we use similar things for the city centre design and development framework, fairly standard approach. But the questions themselves are not yet finalised. They're not intended to be leading questions. They're intended to be relatively open questions, allowing people to express their view. What was the other part of?
There was two bits. Well, one was, does it come back to committee to finally approve the questions themselves? I'm not a regular member on the committee, so I don't know. And the other bit was, will there be a question at the end? Do you or do you not agree? A simple yes or no.
And we can certainly consider that. I mean, one thing I will say about the engagement plan is we'll be speaking to members about the plan and getting feedback before it goes out. But in terms of the format and whether it goes to committee,
I'll pass it. I'll let Serge.
Thank you, convener. There's no intention to come back to committees for the committee to approve the questionnaire, but because it's a long-term engagement, we're calling about 12 months engagement, we will effectively come back, not necessarily to the committee to elected members with regular briefing on where we are in terms of the different stages, and also to make sure that the comments we've heard today in terms of the rural and urban kind of stakeholders' views are taken into account through the process.
Okay.
Thank you, Serge. David, you have your second question. Oh no, you mind if I let Hugh come in first because he's not had one yet? Hugh.
No, it's a little question on active travel routes. Just a particular one in my ward, from the roundabout on the A94 up to Scone Airport. Last back end, we agreed to proceed with its £750,000 we had offered to do that route, but it had to be finished by the 31st of March. It's still not finished. Is that, we've lost the grant, have we?
Lisa.
Thank you, convener. I'm not sure on the detail there. I certainly get back to you and the rest of the committee members, but my understanding is that we were on site and continuing with the works.
Yes, it's not finished yet, but 31st of March was the deadline. It had to be finished. That's why there's such a rush. This money coming out of the Scottish Government so late.
Yeah, we'll confirm that position back to members.
David, your second question.
Okay. Over the last couple of years, there's been a free buses on Saturday scheme. Do we have any feedback on how effective that was?
Yeah, I understand there's work ongoing on that. The public transport team indicated to me they need to do monitoring of the days, the similar days after the free travel ended to be able to compare before and after. They're hoping to get an evidence report in July, but that's not been fully confirmed yet. But that work is underway and there will be evidence presented on the effectiveness of the trial.
Thank you.
You okay with that, David? Thank you. Thank you. Grant Stewart, you've got a second question.
Thank you, convener. Yep, it's on 5.4 in the paper, and I'm delighted that the CTLR had the desired effect of reducing through traffic in Perth City. And certainly residents in East Perthshire are delighted that a lot of them working in Inverarm and the big economic driver in Perth and Kinross. But it's more of a point of clarification around about there's urgency to begin implementing the Perth Transport Future City Plan, which again is a long-term strategic move. And I'm just wondering, where does the increase of traffic come from if we have had success in through traffic using the CTLR. How does the increase of city centre traffic come about, please?
Yeah, so there's a well-known phenomenon known as induced traffic, and that relates to the amount of road space available and traffic. Say, for instance, you widen a road and you put more lanes on it. That makes it easier for people to travel along the road, and that makes it more attractive to travel along the road, and therefore more people will use it, which relates in an increase in traffic and over time. So where it actually comes from, it's to do with how easy it is to move through a space. That's the signal it sends to people that, oh, there's less congestion, easier to go there. So I might think about driving now because it's now easier. But specifically to the Perth and Kinross area, I mean, there is quite a lot of housing development underway around Perth, which over time is likely to increase traffic on the whole. So, you know, if you've got more road space, then people will use it, actually.
Okay, yep, thank you very much. That's an excellent answer, and it clarifies my thoughts. So that statement is, how do we use this window of opportunity to look at other ways of moving people around the city without increasing certainly noxious gases and climate-inducing fossil fuel use?
Thank you, Grant. I think that was more a comment there. Grant Lane.
Thanks, convener. Just put the question in just before the tail end of Councillor Stewart's question is, when this modelling has been done, obviously there's going to be a lot of house building at Perth West. We've got a call for sites out already for LDP3. We're going to have new housing getting built at Luncarty between Luncarty and Destiny Bridge. So there's a lot more house building going to come around, because if you put more infrastructure in, and you're going to have more houses round about it because it's easy to get onto that. When you're doing the modelling, how far into the future with known house building areas coming in is and where they're going to be situated, how is that incorporated into the modelling? Now, these houses might not be completed for 5, 10, 15 years, but I was just wondering if you look at the call for sites and how far into the future of sites that we know that are going to come up, is that incorporated in the modelling?
Yeah, so in terms of the existing modelling that was done to underpin the Cross Tay Link Road, that looked at future scenarios up to, I think, 2037 based on projected house building numbers and things like that. And over the years, we've looked to refine that by looking at actual data to see if it was realistic. And that is a process we're continuing to do. I guess as a council, we are lucky that we have invested in that modelling capability, and we have continued to update it. And we're working closely with the LDP team in terms of any proposals around the LDP3, looking at the impacts of that, and we'll look to build that into any future modelling scenarios.
Thank you. I'm going to come in with a question. I know in Kinross that the smart survey cameras are up just now, looking at travel flows of vehicles. I assume it's just vehicles they're looking at around the town. From a mobility perspective, and seeing quite a lot of, with this paper, focus on Perth, people coming in and out of Perth, which benefits the more rural towns and rural areas as well. But how will that survey information that's collected and model, how will that from a mobility perspective be taken forward with the council to improve mobility through all our towns and urban areas? Thank you.
Yeah, so the cameras that are up at the moment, Convener, are for the model update data collection. So we, along with the Perth City traffic model, we have models for Kinross, Milnathort, Auchterarder, Crieff and Lurgowrie area. So we're looking to update them ahead of the LDP3 development, again, just to assess the impacts of proposals and check to see if previous modelling assumptions are still correct based on current traffic flows, particularly in a post-COVID world. You know, maybe some of the early assumptions need to be reviewed. So yeah, it's an ongoing process, and it feeds into a number of work streams that we have.
Just on the work, sorry, is there any detail on the work streams that will feed into, or just a rough idea?
I guess the core use of the town models out with Perth is probably looking at the development site, but looking at opportunities around mode shift and active travel and other elements that we've got within the mobility strategy could certainly make use of the tools.
That's great. Thank you very much. Do we have any further questions? David? Sorry, I never realised if your other question was trying to remind me of your previous.
Thank you. Please forgive me for being extremely parochial here. In Abernethy, there's an EV charger that hasn't worked for months. Can we ensure or do our best to ensure that proper maintenance contracts are put into place when we're installing all these lovely new EV chargers?
Yeah, that charge in Abernethy, I understand, has been problematic, and I think the team have been pursuing the supplier to get it rectified. Yeah, I think going forward though, the move to a public-private partnership with a new EV provider funded through the EVIF programme, I think will improve the maintenance and ongoing operation, if you like, of the public EV network.
And anything you can do to forward Abernethy would be very much appreciated.
Thank you, David. Any further questions? I will move the report. I'm delighted to see this report coming forward today, reviewing the first 18 months of the mobility strategy. It is an ambitious strategy, but importantly, it is one that is grounded in improving the day-to-day lives of people across Perth and Kinross. At its core, this is about making it easier and more affordable for people to get around, helping them access jobs, services, and opportunities. It's about making our streets safer, improving the air we breathe, and ensuring we are playing our part in tackling the climate emergency, so that future generations can continue to thrive in our communities. What's encouraging is that our priorities are all well aligned with national and regional policy, and that's allowed us to bring in additional investment. Funding from the Scottish Government and TACTRAN is now helping us deliver real improvements across our network, whether that's electric vehicle infrastructure, bus and active travel, road safety, or support for young people through the cycle training. And we are already seeing the difference this is making. The Destiny Bridge and New Kingsway are major achievement for this council. It's reducing pressure in the city centre and giving people more choice on how they travel. We've also expanded 20-mile-per-hour speed limits, making our streets safer for everyone. And we've delivered bikeability training across our primary schools, helping our young people travel confidently and build healthy, active habits. Looking ahead, one of the most important opportunities we have is through Perth Transport Futures for the city centre. The opening of Destiny Bridge and New Kingsway gives us a real chance to rethink how our city centre works. With less traffic passing through, we can start to redesign the space, making it easier for people to walk, wheel and cycle, while still ensuring the city remains accessible. But it is vital that we get this right. That's why engagement will be central to shaping these proposals, working with residents, businesses and communities so that the outcome reflects what people want to see and supports a vibrant, accessible city centre. We will continue to monitor progress through the strategy and bring updates back to the committee so that members can see how this is delivering in practice. Finally, I want to recognise the work that's gone into getting us to this point and across services and with our partners. This is a shared effort and the progress we've made reflects that. I'd like to just sort of thank especially all the officers, you know, Matt Davis, thanks for coming and presenting this, and all the officers from all the different teams who've worked together to make this, bring this report and to develop the practical solutions on the ground. Members, this is a strong start with clear delivery and real benefits already being felt. There is more to do, but the direction is the right one. I am happy to accept the recommendations within the report and move the paper for approval. Can I ask Councillor Liz Barrett to second this?
Thank you, Convener. I'd just like to add my thanks to Matt, Carlin, Neil and the teams. I welcome the streamlining of the plan and the great progress that's being made in our joined up thinking on this, and I'm happy to second approval of this paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Do members have any comments on the report? Andrew.
Thank you very much, Convener. Can I say that I'm hugely welcoming of this report, and for me the Destiny Bridge and the Kingsway was never an end in itself in simply easing road traffic, but always a means to an end, one of those ends being improving the situation in Perth City. And while Perth City Centre is very much a lived-in city and we want to do all we can for the residents, I'm fully cognizant of the fact that we have got to maintain access to the city for all those who use the services in the city and come in from outside. But one of the main things I hope that we can achieve is the reduction in, or if not complete elimination of through heavy traffic through the city that now frankly has very little reason to go through the city. The city centre for heavy traffic can be bypassed to the south on the Friarton Bridge and to the north on the Crosstay Link Road. And whilst a certain amount of heavy goods vehicle traffic does need to service the city centre, very little of that needs to be done at night, and I would be welcoming of everything that we can do to make sure that heavy goods vehicle traffic through the city is minimised. Thanks.
David.
Yeah, thank you, Convener. I don't think we should underestimate the challenge in changing consumer behaviour from our love affair with our cars and our vehicles and our freedom. And I hope that if we instigate something and it's shown not to work, we should drop it fairly quickly and hope that we have that sort of confidence to say, okay, didn't work, try something else. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you, David. Grant.
Thanks, Convener. Yeah, I find it a really interesting paper, and I'd like to think it's a living paper because I think things will change as we move forward, and as long as we listen to people, especially people who live in the area and don't come with preconceived ideas, I think we'll get to a reasonable situation. I think there's been a lot of really good work done by officers, and it also helps when things that we're going to be doing are data driven and not driven by the way that individuals feel and push in a certain way. So I think it's quite a broad-based approach to trying to get a balance between making the city an easier place to go around and a more enjoyable place to walk around for people to come in. I think that's part of it. We're very lucky in Perth to have both the inches and wide open spaces for people to come and walk around as well. So there's no reason why we can't transfer some of that into the city centre. I remember areas of Perth in car parks that used to have trees in between them, etc. But with the change of everything, you know, moving around parking, etc. as well, we're going to have to look at making parking bays bigger and do we increase the area that's used for parking, because they're obviously not big enough for the vehicles that we've got just now. So there's a lot of work to be done there, and I wish you the best of luck. But as long as it's a living, listening document, I'm sure we'll get, or you guys will get there in the end. Thanks.
Thank you. Bob?
Yeah, just two things very quickly, Convener, just to say, reiterate what you were saying about the CTLR. It's a major improvement, I think, to traffic. I travel into Perth, obviously, when I come to the council offices, and Bridgend is now a dramatic change there. And it has done a major effect, I think, on the city centre. Much to a lot of people said it would never work. Certainly in planning, when things came up, people were saying this will never work. It's just going to be a waste of time. But it hasn't. It's been successful. Traffic flows well on it. So I think it was a very great success. And the other thing I wanted to say was is that then we need to push now to get people to switch to electric cars. It's a major change. We can't control prices or technology, but the infrastructure we're talking about, the charging points, will be a major change, I think, for people to realise they can charge, they can get onto chargers, and they will be working. And that will take away one of the big problems, which is this inevitable thing of range anxiety, which I think is an important factor, and also allows people who live in properties which can't get access to a wall charger at their homes, somewhere where they can go and put these vehicles to charge them up at a reasonable price in some cases. So I think that's something we really need to push hard to get these things in place as quick as we can. And finally, if I may, just to thank you, convener and officers, for putting up with my unusual questions, perhaps, and my ignorance today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. Any further?
My little question would be on Destiny Bridge. What's the improvements as such? What we're getting is more traffic coming in through Old Scone, through Bridgend, lorry traffic, HGVs doing that, avoiding the bypass because of the delays at Brock's-Den, my favourite place, which will be blown up. But I hope that Scottish Office will get round to improving Brock's-Den, so that'll again take more traffic out of the centre of Perth or centre of Bridgend, Scone, Old Scone, etc. But there has been quite an increase of lorries, HGVs on that route. I know because I see it every day when I come into Perth. And it's because of Brock's-Den, the delay, and not being fixed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hugh. Hugh, do we have any amendments? If there's no amendments, can I ask that we agree the recommendations in the report? Thank you very much. Thanks very much. Appreciated. Irini, thanks for joining us. Irini is going to lead on the Green Living Fund this is our third year with the Green Living Fund. Brilliant.
Thank you, Convener. The purpose of this report is to provide members of the Climate Change and Sustainability Committee with a proposed approach for delivery of round 3 of the Green Living Fund for review and approval. The Green Living Fund has been designed to provide support to community groups with projects that help address both the cost of living and the climate crisis. Lessons learned from rounds 1 and 2 have been presented, and they have helped inform the proposed approach for round 3. The budget allocation for this year's fund has been presented according to the total funds available for round 3 also taking into account the underspend available from round 2. Some examples from round 2 projects have been illustrated, and a detailed briefing note will be distributed to members in early 2027 following the completion of the monitoring forum by all successful groups. Since its introduction in October 2023, the Green Living Fund has helped 66 community organizations shape and deliver impactful changes locally. This year's funding aims to help even more, further accelerating climate action across Perth and Kinross, while also supporting residents to do so. In conclusion, building on this strong foundation, the Green Living Fund will continue to empower communities and drive collective action, ensuring that local efforts contribute meaningfully to a more sustainable and resilient future for Perth and Kinross. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene. Do we have any questions on this report? Ken?
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, just a brief one, and probably since I'm a new boy to this committee as well. The background in number 5.9, you talk about undersubscribed boards and propose to introduce a requirement for a minimum of 50 votes for all projects. I'm no questioning that, I'm just interested in the background as to why 50, not 20 or not 100. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for this. I guess the idea is that using the approach of participatory budgeting, we want the communities to support the projects that receive funding. So the idea of suggesting a number of 50 votes came up during round 2 last year, with the same approach that was used by the Fair Communities for All Fund that was running at the same time as the Green Living Fund. So it was a mutual decision that came from, I guess, both teams running the funds, and it was a number that we deemed appropriate given how many votes were coming in for each ward. So I think the least the lowest number of votes that we received for a ward was about 100 or 120. So we seemed that 50 votes was quite a reasonable number. So yeah, that's why.
Well, that's fine. Yeah, I didn't think it was arbitrary. I was just wondering where it came from. Thank you.
Any further question? Any further? Grant Lane?
It was just thanks, Convener. If there was an underspend, I'm quite happy for the convener, vice convener to be, to look at across the piece. Do we take into consideration the bang we're getting for our buck? If you've got 2 projects and you look at them and see actually what the outcomes are going to be from each of these projects, you could spend 10,000 on one project that has less of a positive outcome than another project, and is that a way of determining it, or does it just go all these allocations just go down to a sort of public vote?
Thank you. Yes, so the projects were deemed successful following the public vote and a technical scoring. So the scoring was a 50-50 split, so 50% voting, the score from the voting, and 50% from the technical scoring according to the scoring criteria, looking at climate change impact, community impact, cost of living, and the economic impact as well. So with the undersubscribed wards, the idea would be that we're looking at the score of the projects, and we would see which project would be successful according to that. So it's all based on a score basis, really, that takes into account the impact as well. But it looks at 3 different kinds of impact, I guess, or 4 if you were to include the financial impact as well.
Okay, thanks. That makes perfect sense. What I would like to add to that is, and it was the same with the Warm Living Fund, is you could have 2 higher scoring projects in close proximity to another one that's out in another area where you've not got a project. Surely it would be better to have one in either each and give some leeway on where these are allocated, the extra ones, rather than just going by the score. This is when it comes to the convener, vice convener underspend allocation. I'd like to see that we're also looking at, we get not just the highest score, but a spread, and even spread across the local authority of possibly similar projects. Would that be possible? be included.
Yeah, but I think it's when we come down to the criteria and see the projects, if we do have that underspend like we had last year, we can certainly take into that geographical, that kind of making sure all areas are benefiting from it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Please.
Yeah, if I may add, is also worth noting that in cases where we had two projects at a specific ward that came up equal in terms of the score, they both received partial funding. So that's also the scope of looking at participatory budgeting and the technical score. So I presume that that would be looked at as well, and it would be taken into consideration. Therefore, awarding more than just one project.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you, convener. My question is, in terms of assessment, some of these matters are quite technical. We've obviously got significant resource within the council and some of the teams that deal with, for example, flood management, climate, and for example, energy. Do officers within your team liaise and consult with this other, resource within the council to support you? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so we do. The way we scored the applications was that we initially did just a screening or the initial screening, looking at are the projects eligible and do they meet the requirements. We then put them forward to the public voting, and then when we did the technical scoring, we liaised with experts in its area. So we looked at the transport applications, for example, with Matt Davis, who was here earlier. We looked, and other members of the team. We looked at the energy applications with colleagues from the energy team. We looked at the nature applications with colleagues from Green Space and the Perth and Kinross Countryside Trust. We looked at the waste applications with waste colleagues and so on. So it was a combination of our team and a colleague who's really the expert in that area.
Thank you. Any further questions? Jack again.
It dawns me as well as, potentially we have some of our own buildings, for example. I'm thinking in my own ward, for example, something like Schoon Library, which potentially has a demand for energy, electricity, and may have a suitable roof, for example, for some of the measures that are proposed within this fund. Are there opportunities for community facilities that are ultimately owned by the council to potentially apply for this funding too?
I'm not convinced with that one, Jack, but I'm not sure who's the right person to answer. Can you do?
Yeah, sure. I guess the scope of the Green Living Fund is to support local action driven by community groups. So I would say that potentially the funds were not allocated to the Green Living Fund with that scope. It's also worth noting that big energy retrofits like that would require potentially higher funds. So a lot of the groups that were successful in receiving some sort of energy related project or funds to take forward an energy related project, they used it as sort of match funding from other pots of fund as well. So either, to get 12 grand from the Green Living Fund, they were actually successful in getting 50 grand from a different pot, and bringing that all together is what actually enabled them to put things forward. So I think technically would not be possible, but also it doesn't really lie within the scope of this fund.
Yeah, I think there's other avenues to take a project like that through with grant keys and stuff like that with our internal energy team, similar to what we're doing with the swimming pools and everything. Where this is specifically a budget item that went through to support communities to make a difference.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Any further questions? None online. I will move through the report. This report seeks approval for the proposed approach for delivering round 3 of the Green Living Fund. The council allocated £200,000 for delivering the Green Living Fund throughout 2026-27. and due to an underspend from last year's fund, the total amount available for round 3 is £251,240. The Green Living Fund supports community groups to deliver projects that address both the climate emergency and the cost of living crisis. These projects align with key themes linked to our climate change priorities, including energy, transport, waste, resilience, nature, and engagement. Across the key themes, this funding is supporting practical local solutions. In energy, for example, we've seen investment in LED floodlights at Blairgowrie Rugby Club, alongside heat pumps and solar panels at the Maddox Centre, helping to cut energy costs and emissions. In transport, projects like Creef's Cycle Charities Cycling Initiative and the Draft and Flow e-bike project in Aberfeldy are making active travel more accessible. In waste, initiatives such as digital food bank vouchers from Broke Not Broken, alongside community-led activity from CAITH, are reducing waste while supporting the most in need. Regarding resilience-focused projects, we have seen community bus and training projects. Also, we have seen strong ideas come forward and be successfully redirected to other funding streams, such as the Community Resilience Budget, ensuring that projects in places like Gilmerton and Kenmore still receive support. In nature, projects including food growing and biodiversity work in Strathay, Stanley Development Trust Community Garden, and allotments at University Highland and Islands in Perth are enhancing our natural environment and supporting local food production. And in engagement, initiatives such as the repair festivals delivered by Greener Kinrossshire and Remake Scotland are actively involving communities and driving behaviour change. The lessons learned from rounds 1 and 2 of delivering the fund over the last few years have been considered and have played a significant role in designing this year's approach. And just a huge thank to Rini for all the work that's gone into to update and prepare this going forward, and the rest of the climate change team. I'm happy to accept the recommendations within the report and move the paper for approval. Can I ask Councillor Liz Barrett to second?
Thank you, Convener. I'm happy to second this, and I'd ask everyone to please promote the fund in your wards so we can encourage good applications. Thank you.
Do we have any comments on the report? Councillor Grant-Lane.
Thanks, Convener. Yeah, looking at some of the projects that have been funded by this over the last 2 years, has made a big difference to a lot of them. It's a good fund because it's able to be interpreted in various ways to be beneficial to the groups. So I think long may it continue, and to benefit groups across Perth and Kinross Council. I have to say though, I've been here for too many years, more years than I can think, and it's the first time I think I've sat and asked questions that have been so comprehensively answered, and I couldn't find an angle to get into something that somebody might just not know. So I feel a wee bit defeated there by Irini's extreme knowledge of the subject that she's been putting forward today. So well done.
Thank you, Grant. Thank you, Grant. Any further comments? David.
Please forgive me, but I'm very slightly sceptical about participatory budgeting. And the example, and it's an extreme example and not really relevant to Perth and Kinross, but if you were to have a project, for an extreme example, that was evidence-based and was helping sex workers with addiction problems, put against anything involving something cute like puppies, or and I know it's not relevant to this, the Andrex puppies are always going to win above the evidence-based project that actually helps people in real need.
It's a comment, thank you. do we have any amendment for this paper? If there's no amendments, can I ask that we agree this report and the recommendations in it? Thank you, Irini. Thanks for all the work, and I'm glad that you snookered Grant Lane there. Thank you. Are we okay just continuing, or does anybody need a break at this point? It's going to pass over to Liz for the next set of papers. Just keep going. Liz, over to you.
Thank you, Convener. Our next paper is the Perth Surface Water Management Plan, and I'd like to ask Gavin Bissett, the engineer in the flooding team, to introduce the report. Thank you.
Good morning, councillors. We've got a wee short presentation just to provide a bit of background and context to these next two papers as they're specific surface water flood risk projects. Next slide, please. So these two papers today are actions that come out of the Tay Local Flood Risk Management Plan. So these local flood risk management plans set out our actions to manage and, where possible, reduce flood risk across Scotland. So the two specific papers cover the Perth Surface Water Management Plan and the Bridge of Erne Surface Water Flood Study. It's also important to highlight that both these projects contribute to priority areas set out within the Perth and Ross Council's corporate plan, notably tackling climate change and creating resilient communities. Next slide, please. So what is surface water risk? Surface water flood risk. Surface water flooding is defined as flooding which occurs when heavy rain exceeds the capacity of natural or artificial drainage systems, or when the ground is too saturated to absorb water, resulting in water pooling on the surface or flowing over land rather than draining away. So typically we cover runoff from agricultural land and developed land as well. Surcharged drainage systems, either road drainage systems, surface water sewers or combined sewers, as well as sort of minor urban water courses, open channels and ditches. The important distinction here is that there's typically no detailed investigation into the larger river systems, such as in Perth, the River Tay, for example. The focus is specifically on surface water risk. Now, that's not to say we don't consider the impact of rivers on drainage systems and their operation. So we do still take an integrated approach to how we model this to understand that influence, but it's just to make that clear distinction in these approaches for these projects. Next slide, please. So just a bit of clarification as to what the terminology means in terms of a surface water management plan in comparison to a flood study. So there's a wee graphic that shows the typical hierarchy of the surface water flood risk management actions, where we have these overarching flood risk management plans and at the higher scale, and where areas have been identified for surface water management plans, they typically sit just below that and are intended to complement the flood risk management and local flood risk management plans and help to identify actions to manage surface water in a sustainable fashion. These actions that might come out of a surface water management plan may include more targeted flood studies, flood schemes or works, community and property level resilience, maintenance and awareness raising actions. it's therefore the surface water management plan is intended to be a more strategic level project than your typical flood study, which is much more targeted to investigate sort of identified issues. And a key point with surface water management plans are they are an iterative action, so they'll be reviewed in line with wider flood risk management planning cycles, which operate on a 6-yearly basis. So we're currently in the 22 to 2028 cycle. Next slide, please. So to introduce the paper before you regarding the Perth Surface Water Management Plan, this report describes the work carried out to date on this project and the outcome. As I've highlighted, the Council's duties with regard to flooding are set out within the Flood Risk Management Scotland Act, and we are currently in cycle 2 of the TAE Local Flood Risk Management Plans, and the latest one was published in December 2022. The plan sets out the arrangements for various flood studies as a means of further improving and understanding flood risk in certain locations. The plan identified a need to undertake a surface water management plan for Perth. The SWMP built on a range of historic and ongoing projects in Perth investigating flood risk, improving our overall understanding of surface water flood risk and investigating further actions that could be required to manage flood risk in the areas identified with the highest risk. Potential mitigation actions were identified and assessed against technical, environmental, social and economic factors to determine feasibility, and any actions identified as feasible could then be considered for implementation as part of a wider flood protection scheme. The report today highlights that our consulting engineers, AME Consulting, considered a number of potential flood risk management actions and recommended to the Council that 2 opportunities be taken forward, as well as some wider non-structural measures. These 2 feasible options were identified through the Surface Water Management Plan, are surface water separation and sustainable urban drainage systems at the Whitefriars industrial area and at the current site of Dewars and Perth Leisure Pool. These options have the potential to provide significant economic benefit through reduced flood damages and environmental benefits. Recommended that these options are delivered through future development opportunities and controlled through the local development planning process. Engagement is ongoing with internal colleagues as well as design consultants in these areas. The report recognises a number of ongoing projects and proposals which also contribute to the management of overall surface water flood risk in Perth. These include Scottish Water investment projects at Fuse Road, Cavendish Avenue, Bell Sports Centre and Marshall Place, as well as surface water flood protection works that have been identified at Bridgend, which currently awaits Scottish Government funding as part of the Cycle 2 flood risk management schemes, which is currently under review. Surface water flooding brings significant risks of damage and disruption to Perth and is something that has been observed frequently over recent years. Large areas of the city rely on the historic combined sewer network to both drain surface and foul water, and the constrained nature of many areas limits the opportunity to manage these significant volumes of surface water that we experience today above ground. The SWMP demonstrates the challenges in dealing with urban surface water flooding and often require significant infrastructure upgrades that are prohibitively expensive and face numerous technical challenges. Whilst extensive flooding is identified across Perth, in many areas these depths of flooding are predicted to be less than 600 millimetres deep, which is the typical limit of effectiveness of property level flood resilience measures. Findings of the SWMP highlight the increasing flood resilience at both the community and property level is an effective approach to the management of overall flood risk in Perth. The report recommends that the Council continues to explore ways to support the uptake of measures in line with the National Flood Resilience Strategy. The Council will also continue to work with residents, landowners and community groups to explore and support measures to manage surface water flood risk across the city, as well as the wider council area. It's worth noting. The outcomes of the SWMP were made available through a newsletter which was published on the Council's consultation hub and also through a drop-in event which was held earlier this year. Residents have provided feedback on the proposal and a question and answer report has been issued recently to those who engaged with the process and the flood groups in Perth. Those who provided feedback should note that the SWMPs will be reviewed in line with the 6 yearly flood risk management cycles, and all relevant feedback will also be fed into these future iterations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gavin. Can I ask, do members have questions on the report? Any questions in the room or online? Oh, Ken, thank you. Oh, sorry, Andy, I didn't see your hand. Councillor Chan, please.
Thank you, Liz. I know the report says we approve the recommendations of the Perth Surface Water Management Plan, which state there's no viable surface water protection, flood protection schemes have been identified. Obviously, in our ward, Liz, and our ward, there's a lot of flooding, and I just don't understand how there's no viable schemes that we can look at for residents and businesses around that area. I don't understand how that is possible. Can you explain, please?
In summary, a lot of it essentially the viability relates to, it's, to use a phrase that was used earlier, sort of bang for buck in a sense. It costs a lot of money to implement sort of measures to deal with the significant constraints in terms of the sewer network and things in Perth, and doing the economic appraisal. Unfortunately, not many measures came out that basically provided a positive economic case for it. I completely understand that's not a positive message, but that's the terms that we are considering it in terms of how we establish what's viable or not.
You also mentioned the depth of water, and you said 600 mil. 600, that's 300 mil. 600 mil is double that. So if that was on this floor here, it'd be up to our chair. It would be swimming. That's quite. Who makes that decision of 600 mil? Where does that come from, or legislation, or something? Just so I understand.
So that reference to 600 mil depth is in relation to property flood resilience measures. So typically, that is the depth that these can be effective at preventing flood risk or flooding occurring at properties. It's not a guarantee, but that is the general level that they are considered to be an effective approach that people can take. So there's a whole range of different measures that people can look at. With surface water flood risk, we typically advise them to be passive measures, so that may be flood doors that automatically seal when you close and lock them, automatic sort of air brick covers and things that protect other sort of routes that water can enter into a property. So that reference to that 600 mil is to do with property flood resilience, and where that becomes effective or not. And it's in no way meant to dispute 600 mil is a lot of water, absolutely, but it's also it's highlighting that this is an approach that people who are in areas of flood risk should be considering where possible.
Thank you. Point of clarification, Councillor Lang.
Thanks, Vice Convener. I think it'd be really helpful to state that there's many viable flood schemes that we don't go because it's economically viable is the criteria that we're talking about here. So a flood scheme could be viable to stop flooding. So that's viable, which is totally different from economically viable because it doesn't give enough of a return for the input. So can you just clarify if that's the understanding? Viability isn't the fact you can't build the fence, it's because it's not economically viable. And I think that's a very big difference for people out there to understand. When you say something's not viable, it's actually talking about economically viable. If you could just clarify that, please. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that's what you say is correct. A lot of the measures that we considered did not remove flood risk. I suppose that is a key thing. So it's key for us to highlight that whilst they might reduce the flood risk, there would still be residual flooding, and also on top of that, there is the economic case as well. Now, what I'm probably not conveying overly clearly here is the Perth is really constrained, and both topographically and the fact that it's drained largely by the ageing combined sewer network, which is obviously under significant pressure. Yes, there is viable approaches that could look at that again, but that's beyond the scope of the SWMP, as it's a Scottish Water asset. So that's not to say it's not something that we engage with Scottish Water on. It's just not a specific target of this project, but there are other avenues that we continue to engage with Scottish Water on that.
I understand that, and I totally agree with you. We can never say nothing's not viable. We can put men in the moon, we could do something, but it's just economically not viable. And I think that's the only point I'm trying to make.
Yep, agreed. Yep.
Thank you for that point of clarification. Next, I think we have Ken Harvey.
Yeah, thanks, Vice Convener. Actually, Councillor Chan and Councillor Lang have basically stolen my questions there, and your answer stole my other question. But I just want to emphasise the point you said. Structurally, that's one of the major problems here. So structurally, the wastewater disposal is too old, too small. Is that kind of what you're implying?
I think that's a general case across the country. It's not a specific comment in terms of the condition of the Perth infrastructure, but obviously the investigations we've undertaken, and from what we observe and see in Perth, it's clear that there's capacity issues in many areas, and that's obviously something.
Thank you. Councillor Illingworth, don't know if it's yourself or Councillor Anderson or both.
Actually, my specific queries within the Surface Water Management Plan, specific interest of Bells and the loss of the Bells Centre in Perth. I'm on a sports council, and the amount from sports queries with Bells not been in proper operation, and the dangers that best it was 2020 when it was surface water problems closed it. 24 with a gate open didn't help. It was more surface water problems at that time as well. There's a scheme, thank God. Scottish Water have come up with a proposal to relieve that problem 4 years ago. We're still sitting waiting for something to happen with that. It's not like Perth to throw away money or not accept the money to get that project done. What timescale is there for getting that scheme in operation in Bells. It's about £6 or £7 million, wasn't it? I think round about that Scottish Water were prepared to spend to help Perth out. It's on you.
I suppose that really is something that I can't answer on behalf of Scottish Water. I don't have their exact timescales to hand. They will update as their project progresses. I don't know if any of my other colleagues are aware. Rick.
Yeah, simply put, we're in constant dialogue with Scottish Water. Their programme is theirs to manage, and we're trying to push for delivery at that location, amongst others, as best we can, and dovetail in our work on Bells through property, and we're liaising with property through the flooding team to ensure that what we need to see from surface water management is aligned and integrated with what Scottish Water are doing, so that they don't conflict with each other and they work in sequence. But it makes sense to deliver together rather than in part, because then it's an effective solution for that location. So we're engaging with Scottish Water in real time. But I don't have a programme either, because that's their programme primarily.
Yeah, they gave us quite a long timescale. That money was an offer such for the project. I'd have thought in 4 years' time we would have had talks and had it installed by now, because it's finished the works on down Tate Street and everything else. I think there's some work on the north end of that being carried out now. Once that's finished, well, I gather it's just development on the answer I'm getting. Well, just a time scale.
Thank you. Councillor Ling, you have a question. Thank you.
Oh, good. So apologies for putting a C in the chat. What was? I don't know why you'll know yourselves. You know, obviously, as you've said, the infrastructure in Perth is too old to be able to cope basically with the more houses that are being built and by the change in weather conditions. So everything backs up. In Stanley, they weren't allowed to build any more houses until the sewage and wastewater plant was upgraded, which is now being done. Can we not do we look at this in enough detail through planning to say, well, yes, these houses can be built there, but first of all, this Scottish Water's got to update the system that's going to be utilised for both wastewater, foul water, and I know that I remember sitting through a committee where we don't put stormwater into have joint drains anymore. Why can't we do that? And improve the infrastructure for further building round about Perth, because at the moment we're building higher and higher up because all the ground underneath we can't build on because it's in a flood area. So we build higher up, but water has a tendency, as you will know a lot better than I do, to flow downhill. So I was just wondering what we can do to mitigate it through Scottish Water and joint, but through the planning process.
So Scottish Water are a statutory consultee through the planning process, so they input to all sort of planning applications, particularly at the major level, and they obviously have to advise on capacity in terms of foul water drainage. Their position is that they typically have a national position where they can't be seen to prohibit development, which is probably what comes across through their consultation, but they have to obviously identify ways to mitigate any impacts there may be through development. That's with the developer and Scottish Water. So So they're an active participant within the planning process already, as you allude to as well. In terms of how we actually drain new developments from a surface water point of view, there's a requirement legally for sustainable urban drainage systems, and they mean we have a separate system for surface water. It's not going into the combined system. There are some exceptions to that, where it may be as the development of a brownfield site and there's an existing connection already into the sewer. In these instances, there's typically a betterment sought, or there will be a betterment sought on terms of the levels of water that can drain from a site through those existing connections back to a more natural runoff rate, the greenfield runoff rate. So through the planning process, there are ways that this is looked at. We try our best to make sure we don't make anything worse. We make sure we follow the national policies and local policies and seek improvements where we can. But in terms of the foul drainage and things, that's ultimately through Scottish Water that has to be controlled.
Thank you. I think we just have one more question from Councillor Welsh. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Committee members received an email from Janice Haig in her role as chairperson of the Perth Community Flood Aid. I don't know if officers have seen that email. I was just, wondering. There's a number of, questions, and recommendations for consideration in that email. Without me asking each of the questions, I just wondered if, on the basis that officers have had a chance to have a look, whether there's elements of that are going to be considered and taken forward. Thank you.
So in summary, the email received from the Community Flood Aid Group, we've kind of covered that with one of the questions from Councillor Chan regarding depths of flooding. It was a clarification and just a point of note about the phrasing and how that was perceived by the community, which we addressed through our question and answer report that was issued to them. The second point, they'd asked about sort of lower cost, smaller scale options that may be considered, specifically with regards to an idea for Low Road in Perth. That's something we've been actively engaging with the group on. We had our consulting engineers have a look at the proposal. Unfortunately, there was a few constraints, and that meant that the preferred idea wasn't viable, but we looked at alternative measures and communicated a short report back to them, and are continuing to work with them, not just on that specific issue, but across the board. And we feel we've developed quite a good relationship to continue to work with the Flood Aid Group specifically, with hope to support and help manage flood risk through them.
Good. That's encouraging to hear. I think, ultimately, residents are the eyes and ears on the ground, and, certainly the sort of photographs and videos that they can produce at times of extreme weather events, can significantly help, officers like yourself, develop subsequent plans. So thank you.
Thank you. And a further question from Councillor Chan.
Thank you, Vice Convener. In point 4.17, you've identified two options there, Whitefriars and your Perth Leisure Pool site. Can you just expand on what the disconnection and SUDS options are? Thanks.
So these opportunities were identified as areas where we can. It was kind of what we were talking about earlier, the answer to Councillor Lang in terms of reducing the amount of water going into the combined sewer. These areas in Perth all connect and drain directly into the combined sewer, adding to capacity issues during extreme events. these sites were identified as an opportunity to hold water and store it prior to discharging it back into the sewer at a greatly reduced rate. Now, obviously, both sites are subject to separate sort of proposals as to what their long-term future might be. That still presents an opportunity to achieve flood risk benefits. So we're engaging through that planning process and with internal colleagues to see that we can maximise the benefits from these sites through any development proposals as well.
Okay, thank you. If there aren't any further questions, I'll now move the report. As Gavin outlined, the Flood Risk Management Scotland Act 2009 introduced a more sustainable and modern approach to flood risk management in Scotland. The flood risk management plans and local flood risk management plans set out a range of actions that SEPA and responsible authorities take to manage and, where possible, reduce the risk of flooding over a 6-year period. To better plan and coordinate action on this, the Council is working closely with other public bodies to implement national and local plans. This Perth Surface Water Management Plan is one of the latest outputs of the ongoing process and explored a range of actions and sets out how flooding can be tackled in the future and how we'll seek to reduce the impact of our unpredictable weather exacerbated by climate change. The findings of the SWMP have been disseminated and discussed with the community via the Council's consultation hub and supplementary local community drop-in sessions. And the main comments or concerns raised by the community during the consultation period were addressed through the subsequent question and answer report, which is on the website. I'd like to thank all those who participated in the consultation and thank Gavin Bissett and the officers for all their work on the report and recording and responding to the concerns from the community. Although no standalone flood schemes been identified, the SWMP highlights 2 areas where feasible benefits can be achieved through the retrofitting of sustainable drainage systems, or SUDs, and the separation of surface water from the combined sewer network in specific locations at Whitefriars and at Glover Street. It recommends that these benefits are best achieved through future development opportunities. The SWMP also highlights that community and property level resilience are effective tools to reduce surface water flood risk in Perth, which builds on and aligns with flood risk management actions centred on awareness raising and community resilience, as well as the Scottish Government's National Flood Resilience Strategy. As Gavin Bissett said in his introduction, and reiterated in response to questions from Councillor Chan, PKC continues to work with residents, landowners and community groups to explore and support measures to manage surface water flood risk across the city and in the wider council area. And on a parochial note, I too hope that measures to improve the situation at Low Road can be developed and implemented. I'm happy to accept the recommendations in the report and move the paper for approval, and I'd like to ask Councillor Waters to second.
Thank you, Liz. Flooding is definitely one of the biggest challenges we will have with climate change, where we're seeing more intense levels of flooding and the frequency is increasing. Within that, I would like to thank officers for the whole flooding team for their engagement, both personally and within the communities I serve and locally. They've always been quick to respond, no matter whether it's a large questions on a large flood scheme or anything, but also on the smaller flooding issues that just affect odd houses or a few houses. I found the response to be exceptional. There's no question that their job will become more and more challenging as we see more and more flooding impact throughout the area. But just a big thanks for all the work you do with all the flooding schemes and all the local issues that you do engage with directly. Thank you. Happy to second, by the way.
Thank you. I was wondering if you're going to add that bit. Thank you. Do members have any comments on the report? I see a comment from Councillor Lane.
Yeah, thanks, Vice Convener. I was actually a little bit disappointed that Councillor Waters didn't take the paper because of all the comments it could have been with his surname and the subject matter, but I think that was maybe organised to prevent me. So that was a wasted couple hours last night. No, I'd like to thank the officers for the work. It's a really hard job to do, and it is the motion for people who are flooded. We can never underestimate what they must go through when it happens to them. So it's good that we continue our work with smaller schemes, etc., helping them and advising them, and that we have got community groups that are looking to assist each other and find funding to prevent flooding of their own homes. So thanks for all the work that you do. I know, as again I say, it's very difficult to do. I do think maybe moving forward we will have to make a calculation that's not just on finance and that, and maybe bring some emotional context into it when we're moving forward to valuing what we can and can't do. And I'd like you again for increasing my knowledge within the paper. I now know the difference between fluvial and pluvial. So thanks for putting that in with a small description beside each to what they were, because I didn't know them before. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ling. Councillor Lingworth.
Right, thank you. It's a general comment. I think we've been talking about bang for buck here. In a world where the People's Republic of China are burning 1 million tons of coal a day, and we've got President Trump saying drill, baby, drill, I think we get a lot more bang for buck by locally by implementing flood reduction measures than we do from reducing our carbon footprint. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Illingworth. Deputy Provost Parrott.
Thank you very much. These are important issues, and I welcome this paper, and I also welcome paper 8, which I think we're going to be looking at shortly. But in view of Councillor Lang's comments about the convener's name and whether he should have been taking this paper, I simply can't resist the temptation to say I'm glad that we have a surface water management plan and not a surface water active management plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. If there's no amendment and no further comments, please can we agree the recommendations in this report? And I suggest we have a 10 minutes recess, okay? Thank you all. Our next paper 7 is the Bridge of Erne Surface Water Flood Study, and I'd like to ask Russell Stewart, Senior Engineer in the flooding team, to introduce the report, please. Thank you.
Hi, I think we're putting up the last slide of the Earth Surface Water Management presentation, please. Thank you. This report describes the Council's surface water flood study at Bridge of Erne. The location has experienced a history of flooding, most recently in 2023, and the community of Bridge of Erne remains at risk of flooding. The Council's duties with regard to flooding are set out in the Flood Risk Management Scotland Act, which was covered by Gavin in introduction, and it explained that Bridge of Erne surface water flood study is in action in the current Cycle 2 Tay Local Flood Risk Management Plan. The purpose of the study was to investigate what further action would be required to manage flood risk in this location. Actions could then be identified and assessed against technical, environmental, social and economic factors to determine feasibility. Any feasible actions could then be implemented as part of a flood protection scheme. The Bridge of Erne surface water flood study analysed integrated flooding mechanisms affecting Bridge of Erne, and a series of flood maps were produced. Figure 1 on the current slide shows an example of the 1 in 30-year flood map. This work provided a detailed understanding of surface water flood risk across the study area, providing and identified 3 areas at high risk of flooding, which we referred to as flooding hotspots, and they are highlighted in yellow in figure 2. The areas are Kintillo, number 1, Old Edinburgh Road number 2, and the Backstreet area is number 3. The consultant initially considered a long list of 83 potential actions to manage the risk of flooding, including anything from woodland restoration in the upper catchment to localised drainage improvements in the town. These actions were refined by technical, environmental and economic appraisal to produce a preferred shortlist of 7 options. Details of the 7 shortlisted options, together with their estimated costs and benefit cost ratios, are shown in figure 3. All options have a benefit cost ratio greater than 1 and could be progressed individually. However, to improve efficiencies, the report recommends option 6, the storage area through the provision of SUDS at Old Edinburgh Road, and option 11, upstream storage area at Kilgraston, with drainage improvements at Backstreet, are combined into a single flood protection scheme for Bridge of Erne. The scheme will provide varying levels of benefit to reduce surface water flood risk in hotspots 2 and 3, and so a standard of protection cannot be designated. However, if the scheme was implemented, the total number of properties at risk of flooding up to the 1 in 30 year flood event would be reduced by 10, rising to 26 in the 1 in 200 year event. The recommended scheme is estimated to have a capital project cost of £490,000 and an overall benefit cost ratio of 5.5. The study has therefore concluded that the proposed flood protection scheme is economically viable and should be implemented. The study was unable to identify an economically viable option for hotspot 1, which was Kintillo, mainly due to the majority of flooding being external to properties in this area. However, the surface water flood study also recommends non-structural actions, such as the promotion of property flood resilience measures. This aligns with the ongoing actions to manage flood risks under the Tay Local Flood Risk Management Plan and is a subject of the next paper at today's committee. So those areas like Kintillo and other areas that have previously had a flood study, like of Green Lonan, Bank Boot, Cooper Angus, we would recommend that they listen to the next paper or apply for that if it's approved. A consultation exercise was carried out via the Council's consultation hub during the period 2nd of December 2025 to the 23rd of January 2026, including 2 drop-in sessions held in local facilities on the 10th of December 25 and the 13th of January 26. Residents and other community groups, such as the Community Council, had the opportunity to view and comment on draft outputs from the surface water flood study. They were able to speak directly to council officers, our design consultants, and other agencies such as Scottish Water and the Scottish Flood Forum. Feedback received indicated residents were generally supportive of the proposed options and were keen to see some of the proposals implemented where possible. However, concerns were raised in relation to beaver activity, provision of SUDS at Clayton Road, and the perception of increased flood risk from future local developments, as well as other issues. The question and answer report addressing the main comments raised during the consultation period was disseminated to all respondents, including the Community Council, and is available to view on the consultation hub. Comments raised were relevant and informative, but did not fundamentally alter the conclusions and recommendations of the project. In addition, the committee report notes that the proposed flood scheme will be submitted to SEPA for national prioritisation and including in the next Cycle 3 Tay Flood Risk Management Plan and Local Flood Risk Management Plan covering the period 2028 to 2034. The Cycle 3 Tay Local Flood Risk Management Plan will set out the proposed implementation arrangements for the scheme, including timescales and how it will be funded. However, due to the ongoing Scottish Government causal review of capital funding, timescales and funding arrangements for the scheme remain unclear for the time being. The next phase of work to develop the flood scheme proposal will therefore not commence until the funding review provides further clarity around capital grant funding and a provision is made within the Council's capital programme. This concludes the introduction to this Bridge of Erne surface water flood study. I'm happy to answer any question. Got it.
Thanks, Russell. Does anyone have any questions on this report? Councillor Illingworth.
Yeah, can I start by saying how grateful I am to the flood team for providing this? It's excellent work, but the question that's in my mind is when? Is it like to be this decade or next decade?
The way the flood protection scheme and the funding process works is that we would, like all other councils, would submit our schemes to SEPA, who then basically prioritise all the flood schemes across Scotland. So there's been 3 cycles. Cycle 1, some of those schemes are still ongoing. Cycle 2, there's a list of schemes under that, which none of them have actually commenced yet. And cycle 2 runs from 2022 to 2028. So cycle 3, which would include Bridge of Erne, runs from 2028 to 2034. So if cycle 2 hasn't commenced yet, it might be some time. When the cycle 3 plan is published, which will be around about 2028, it should say within that plan what the timescales are, what the funding arrangements are. So until 2028, we don't know, really, is the answer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? If there are none, I'll move the report. The Flood Risk Management Scotland Act introduced a more sustainable and modern approach to flood risk management in Scotland. The plan set out the range of actions that SEPA and the responsible authorities take to manage and, where possible, reduce the risk of flooding over the 6-year period. And the Council's working closely with other public bodies to implement national and local plans, as I explained in the context of the Perth surface water management. The Bridge of Erne surface water flood study is one of the latest outputs from this and sets out how flooding will be tackled in the future and how we'll seek to reduce the impact of the weather. The draft fundings have been disseminated and discussed with the community, and I'd like to thank everyone who participated in the drop-in sessions. The main comments or concerns raised by the community were addressed through the question and answer report that's on the website. So the recommended scheme aims to reduce the impact of flooding by up to 26 properties in the Bridge of Erne area. However, the implementation of the proposed scheme, as Russell's just confirmed, will take time due to the current limitations on capital funding for Cycle 3, which doesn't run till 2028 to 2034. And I share the frustration of many with the priorities of the SNP government and the delay and uncertainty around funding support to councils to tackle flood risk, as we don't even have the funding for 2022 to 28 yet. The surface water management scheme also highlights that community and property level resilience are effective tools to reduce flood risk in Bridge of Erne, which builds on and aligns with flood risk management actions centred on awareness raising and community resilience, as well as the Scottish Government's National Flood Resilience Strategy. The Council will continue, as elsewhere, to encourage all residents and landowners at risk of flooding in Bridge of Erne to take proactive steps to mitigate flood risk in their property by considering the installation of property flood resilience measures, and we will speak more about that in the next paper. I am happy to accept the recommendations in this report and move the paper for approval. Can I ask Councillor Waters to second the report?
Happy to second the report, Liz.
Do members have any comments on the report?
Can I make an amendment, please?
Thank you, Councillor Illingworth. Would you like to propose your amendment?
The wording is on the screen and should be on the screen. Here we go. Here we go. Thank you. Yeah, it's to amend recommendation 2.2 to add with the addition of option 8, speed hump on Clayton Road. And effectively this brings forward the speed hump, which has a cost benefit of 17.3 and a cost of £42,000. And if possible, it would be great to get that put in before 2028 or 2034, 2020, whatever, a long time away. On top of that, I'd like to just make a quick comment about the impact of flooding in Bridgeverne. It isn't just the 26 houses that are affected. It's the 100 or so houses that are effectively cut off when Old Edinburgh Road closes and when Back Street closes. Clayton Park, the whole of Oudenaarde, all of Clayton Road, Old Edinburgh Place, and Scott Way are all. The other impact is on insurance levels. Scott Way, houses that are actually quite a way up from the flood risk. They're 2 or 3 feet higher, but they're still impacted by insurance. They still have to pay an awful lot more insurance. So that's why I'm keen to get as many of this particular amendment through as quickly as I possibly can. So thank you very much for allowing me to make that amendment.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder?
I'm happy to second amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. I just ask Fraser Crofts to comment, please.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Just for clarity, the amendment would be included within the scheme design, which would be undertaken by the flood scheme as part of the normal process. This would not be an acceleration of that particular item, you know, as a specific a piece of work to be carried out in advance of the flood scheme.
Thank you for that clarification. Do we have any further comments on, sorry. In your summing up, is that right? Yes, you'll have the opportunity to sum up the amendment. Does anyone have any other comments at the moment? Oh, yeah. Councillor Ling has a point of clarification, and then we have a comment from Councillor Welsh. Thank you.
Thanks, Vice Convener. So actually, what is the amendment doing if this is coming forward anyway in the design? What are we voting on in the amendment? Does the amendment have any effect to anything that's happening? That's what I'm asking. What is the amendment achieving?
So my understanding is there's a request here to add in an additional option to the scheme design. So there's already 2 items within the scheme, and the amendment request is to add in 1 additional option, which is the option 8, into the overall design.
Okay, thanks for that, because I thought it was maybe that there was, if it was 42,000, we were maybe looking to fund it, the council to go ahead and do that on its own. Okay, thanks.
Sorry, and that was my point of clarification. And in return is that it's not to be accelerated. This forms part of the overall project, overall design.
Okay, thanks. I just want everybody to be clear. Thanks.
So given we've had that clarification, I'm happy to accept this into the recommendations. So I will accept the amendment if that's okay with Councillor Waters. Oh, a comment from Councillor Welsh, sorry.
Yeah, it's probably rather a comment, a point of clarification as well. I'm just trying to work it. Is this a road safety measure or a bund as some sort of road bump? What role is this feature on the road surface performing, please?
The road itself is susceptible to flooding, so the road hump is going to be there to redirect the water from the road into it'll be the yellow burn that's adjacent to it. So it'll allow the community of Oudenaarde to exit through Clayton Road until such time as the bridge to the A912 is built, because there's works at Old Edinburgh Road as well. That is one of the options. I can't remember if it's 6 or 11. So that would allow that route that's currently blocked when there's heavy rainfall. Those 2 roads are susceptible to flooding and makes it difficult for traffic to negotiate.
So again, just to clarify, I'm not familiar with this area. So is this like a feature in the road that directs water, significant, flood water that's running down the road that can't be accommodated by standard drainage to then be diverted into some sort of SUDS feature or something like that? Is that essentially what we're chatting about here?
Yeah, it's just a measure to take the water off the road so it doesn't pond on the road, and it'll be, we call it a road hump or whatever you want to call it, but it'll have to be designed such that still HGVs and any other vehicles can negotiate it as well.
Okay, so if there are no further comments or questions about that or about the recommendations as amended, I'd like to ask if we can agree the recommendations in the report.
I think I need to just agree that I'm happy to have.
Oh, sorry, I thought you'd indicated that. I didn't realise you'd interrupted that process. Sorry, Richard.
No, absolutely happy to have this incorporated within the motion.
Thank you. So the recommendations now incorporate in the scheme that we'll put forward for cycle 3 to have the bump on the road. Can I ask if we can now agree the recommendations in the report? Thank you all. Yes, because I didn't give you a summing up because we adopted your amendment, so yes.
Can I express my gratitude to both the convener and vice convener for supporting this and to the officers for all their work. I'd also like to express gratitude to the roads department who have already put in drains on Back Street and Old Edinburgh Road, which hopefully they haven't been tested yet, but they should help matters. So thank you very much to everybody concerned.
Thank you. We now move on to paper 8, which is the Perth and Kinross Council Property Flood Resilience Grant. And I would like to ask Dr. Rick Haynes, Flooding Manager, to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Okay. I've got a short presentation to hopefully explain and illustrate the proposals that are presented in the report itself. So there's a little bit of overlap. So this paper looks to gain support for what we're terming the Property Flood Resilience Grant, PFRG, to cover the Perth and Kinross area wholesale. Next slide, please. Okay. Right, thank you. So a question of why the council must act in this context of a property flood resilience grant. There is a legislative foundation under the Flood Risk Management Scotland Act where local authorities as responsible authorities deliver through the modern plan-led approach to address flood risk across Scotland and in PKC in this context. We have a duty to manage flood risk across a wide range of scales and implementations, and this approach delivers another layer to mitigating flood impacts in our area. There's a strategic driver under the principle of a shared responsibility. Scottish Government policy, and it's been touched on occasionally in the previous two papers, that there are challenges to the delivery of large-scale formal flood protection schemes, and that we cannot collectively protect every single property through those sort of approaches. The grant will empower individual property owners to protect themselves, and which is in itself a key pillar of the national living with flooding strategy. Next slide, please. Where this approach starts to see real benefits is through the Build Back Better principle. We're not just bailing water out or trying to pick and choose where we have our greatest effects. PFR, property flood resilience, will make buildings and their occupants more resilient to the physical and emotional impacts of flooding. Something just as a point of clarity, the two key terms are resistance and resilience. The explanations given there, obviously, each PFR approach will deliver varying degrees of resistance and resilience. The principle being to keep the water out through flood doors, gates, and automatic air covers, and then the resilience measures to reduce the actual impact and damage caused by floodwater by keeping masonry less porous and keeping the water out, allowing electric installations to be out of the floodwaters and not damaged as readily. And some of these measures can be a mixture of retrofitted or installed at time of construction, depends on the installation and the site. Next question, please. Oh, sorry, next slide, please. So the proposals under the grant are to offer the opportunity for financial support to enable PFR measures to be installed. The principles are to test the eligibility, and it's open to private homeowners and business owners who have been flooded previously or deemed to be at high risk of flooding. The typical reference point is the SEPA flood maps that are accessible online. Through a desktop exercise, it was sensible to put a cap on the grant sum available. It was set at about £5,000 per property, and I can explain where that number comes from in a later slide. What it covers is, it can cover, and it depends on the site context, a survey of the property to identify what measures would be most applicable to that installation, the materials themselves and the installation. We're not absolutely set on a contractor installation. Some elements can be homeowner installed. They're available through typical high street outlets, but there are specialist measures that would benefit from a specialist contractor installation. So the grant would be available for the applicant to use to cover those typical three categories. Something of important to note here is that the property owner is responsible for the ongoing maintenance. We are providing a financial assistance to an applicant. We're not the council is not able to take on private property installations, and we're not advocating any one approach. It depends on the specific context, and the applicant would be responsible with undertaking the checks and balances to make sure it was appropriate, getting it installed properly, and the ongoing maintenance, because these measures will be in use for a number of years. Next slide, please. So a typical run through of the application is it is predominantly digitally administered, but there are accessible options if requested. But the applicant will submit a form to the council with evidence of the prior history of flooding for their location. They will submit the expert advice by way of either the Scottish Flood Forum Property Protection Advice Form, which is online, or a suitable alternative. And there are companies out there that will assess a property for what property flood resilience measures are applicable to their location. That should provide the property owner the comfort that a trained, considered specialist has looked at the property and advised them accordingly. That would need to be submitted to justify the next step, which is a quotation from either a retail outlet or an installer as to what the cost would be to satisfy the expert advice. So that is just, for us, it is to prove that the applicant has considered what is needed and is making a choice as to what they will install. We as the council officers will consider the application package and make sure that it is comprehensive as it can be, and effectively approve the application or request sufficient extra information as needs be. Next slide, please. So once all the documentation has been submitted and checked for completeness, and that's the quotation, the advice, there is a terms and conditions to be signed by both sides, which is effectively stating that this is what the applicant will be installing and will serve as the basis for the final inspection. The council will be just checking that the appropriate equipment has been installed per the original application. We're not proposing to undertake a qualitative assessment of what has been installed. That would be down to the agreement between the applicant and the installation contractor if they've appointed one. We are not offering, the council are not necessarily offering any guarantees over the installation of the equipment itself. That will be down to the applicant to ensure it's been installed appropriately. Next slide, please. So what does this actually bring to not just the applicant, but the wider community and ultimately the Perth and Kinross area? There is the direct physical protection for the home and the residents, which by its very nature will reduce the amount of damage to the property that would have taken place if the measures were not installed. The principle of resilience and protection is that there will then be faster recovery as the flood dissipates. That will bring comfort to residents and businesses because they will be able to be back up and running after a flood much more quickly than without these measures being installed. There will be a reduction, there should be a reduction in stress and improved mental health for the residents because there are visible, tangible benefits from the installation of these pieces of equipment. And as mentioned before, there should be a consequential benefit through property insurance levels as well. By having these protection measures in place, one would hope that the insurance industry is taking cognizance of that, and it is a much bigger business than we are. And I have as limited input into it, but through Flood Re and other sort of approaches, the insurance industry is taking account of how climate change is affecting the individual property, and it will be down to a conversation between the applicant and their own insurance provider as to the exact benefits of the property flood resilience measures being installed. Next slide, please. In terms of the operational side of the PKC area, I would expect that there would be fewer emergency costs, call outs for either other services within the council or emergency services themselves, as the properties in either isolation or in groups are becoming more resilient to flooding and more protected on a case-by-case basis. So there'll be a reduction in operational costs there and need for assistance. We are, as a consequence of installing these things, becoming more adaptive to the influences of climate change as time goes by. Over time, there could be more measures come on stream, and it could be that a scheme through a different work area comes in. But at the moment, in some locations, property flood resilience is an accessible alternative approach to flood protection and resilience. And it has been highlighted that PFR measures are significantly more cost effective on a wide number of cases than large traditional schemes. So there are benefits in several different dimensions. Next slide, please. So part of my task here is to ask for the support of the paper and the uptake of property flood resilience as an additional layer to protection of individual properties and people and businesses in the PKC area. We will obviously be subject to approval here, of course, monitoring the uptake, delivery and effectiveness of PFR measures. Other local authorities have taken a similar sort of approach, and they're at different stages of the journey. So we will be, I'm proposing that we would do similar and monitor all throughout. And I'm looking for some support on the strategy to ensure that our resources are aligned to meet the demand for PFRG, because there is the potential for this to be quite a positive approach and taken up well by the communities of the area. Next slide, please. And just by way of example, the Fife Property Flood Resilience Grant Scheme was commenced build in 23, launched in the spring of 24 with a similar cap but different funding block behind it, just by way of illustration. And through those subsequent points 2, 3 and 4, I've tried to keep abreast of how the approach has been taken, and it's essentially the same approach that I'm proposing here for PKC, but in the since April 24 to November 25, and sorry, there's one more bullet point. My transition didn't work. You just click once, please. There we go. That's better. May 26. They have now distributed £309,000 worth of grant amounts, typically in the £3,500 per property level. So with the funding that we are grateful to receive, we're looking to initially assist no less than 30 properties, but I see this more as a starting approach and see how it takes off. But they have had overwhelming support from the Fife community. Applications were very rapid to come in, and the council has delivered, like I said, £309,000 worth of equipment funding. Next slide, please. So yes, like I said, I see this at the moment as a seed fund pilot exercise. It's difficult to predict how well it'll be taken up by the community until it is actually live and launched. But the delivery, I'm looking to deliver through the flooding team with support and assessments by Scottish Flood Forum and other agencies out there. The approach has been considered by a number of services within the council and has suggestions made and accommodated within the process. We will, of course, be looking to liaise with other services such as planning for areas that are in conservation areas or listed buildings, housing and property for where there are conjoined buildings, and you obviously can't achieve maximum benefit for only one half of a conjoined semi-type building. So we will work with the participant owner of the other property as and when those applications are considered. And we will ultimately see where this takes us. Next slide, please. So what it will look like is it's an online process. There will be, and it is drafted and ultimately subject to approval, ready to launch as soon as practicable. But there's a full explanation on the web page as it comes as to what it is, how it can be accessed. The application form is right there, and an accessible PDF version is available for applicants and residents who are not as IT capable as others. So it is an equitable opportunity approach being proposed. But that is drafted, ready to go. Next slide, please. Yes, I think I can skip over that one. I've just said it is. So that is a whistle-stop tour of the Property Flood Resilience Grant paper, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Rick. I see a question first from Councillor Andy Chan.
Thank you, Vice Convener. You mentioned the grant of £5,000, 2,000, up to £5,000. I'm wondering, like, if I was to protect a property, a 4-bedroom bungalow, for example, what does that £5,000 up to £5,000 give? Like, obviously, door guard.
Yes, so as a starting point, if you go to the Scottish Flood Forum website, there is the advisor tool there where you put in the sort of details of your property as to, is it a bungalow, is it a semi-detached, is it a detached, how many prime access doors do you have, how many air brick covers how many air bricks do you have, and it will produce a report suggesting how many property flood resilience equivalents you can consider. Along with that tool, it gives a typical sort of cost associated with each of those measures and then a total cost. So the sort of ballpark figures for a flood door are anywhere from £1,000 to several £1,000s, depending on what type of door and what sort of scale of door you're looking to install. An air brick cover would be a replacement air brick, or you can get a sort of a screw-on cover instead of an automatic one. There are options available in the marketplace. So the tool gives a sliding scale of how much it might cost for your particular property. And that depends on location within an area, as well as type of property and the features of it. So there is no one figure, which is why we ask the applicant to submit one of these reports to say, well, the tool has suggested I need 6 air brick covers. That's going to be a couple of £100 or so to have them installed. It depends on what features are selected by the homeowner, because we're not saying this is what you must install. We're saying these are the features that tool recommends. It is up to the applicant to select which ones best suit their circumstances. A typical sort of survey cost of a property, if it was done by Scottish Flood Forum or an alternative party, is a few £100s. Depends on the scale of the property. Much like a home report for sale, surveying a bungalow is going to be different to surveying a larger detached property, for example. So that's down to the company, but that would be within the grant. Principle is that the grant goes up to a certain point to then provide access to more properties. Anything above that £5,000 cap would be borne by the applicant. But the feedback from Fife is that they've experienced typically £3,500 worth of application, which means given it's under the 5,000 cap, it's a total fund, basically. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. I see Councillor Braun has 3 questions. Can I have your first question, Bob? Unless they're all related, if you want to do all 3 of them at once.
No, they'll all be different. So I'll do the first one. And I think it's been partially answered, but I was just wondering the 5,000 limit. My thoughts were, is that absolute? Because I'm thinking many of our wards are rural, and some of the costs, particularly of installation, for the same job could be far more in a rural area than in, say, a town centre or near a town or city. So is that an absolute limit, or would you be able to consider the odd one, which is because of its location or whatever, needs to be of a higher figure?
The £5,000 cap was arrived at, and it was independently considered. It just happens to be the same number as I found in Fife as I found here. What I did was I ran a range of property types in a range of different locations, both urban and rural, through the same Scottish Flood Forum tool, and it came out at the same point as saying 5,000 would give the majority coverage to the majority of properties. There will be some that are less and they will be totally funded. There will be some that are more and they will get the £5,000, and then the rest is up to them to provide. So to answer the simple question of is it going to be absolute, I think it should be yes, because then it gives equitable opportunity and clarity to all applicants that that is the same for everybody.
Fine, thanks for that.
Thanks, Bob. Apologies, Councillor Illingworth. I had not noticed yours had popped up at the same time as Councillor Braun's.
Like me in audit, I have a carer to look after me. So, yeah, the question is, it sounds like a fantastic scheme. Where does the money come from?
I'm grateful to Councillor Barrett at the end of the table for submitting an amendment at budget setting earlier in the year. So the £150,000 has been identified, allocated, and is available.
Councillor Lane?
Thanks, Vice Convener. Yep, I think it's a fantastic idea and I fully support it. Just a couple of things. I noticed in the last slide of about Fife and the allocations, there was 109 applications declined. So I was wondering if when we put out our applications, we can look at what the ones in Fife have been declined on, the basis why they've been declined, and include that to save officers time of looking through applications that would be declined. So it's for tightening up the criteria, but utilising the results of the Fife trial or the Fife project. So that's the first thing. And I'm going to have to go because I've got another meeting in 15 minutes. But the other thing I was wanting to ask, if you don't mind, Vice Convener, to put in as well, is when you do this, if you get publicity from the people who've received the grant and some photographs and that to go out, that will help more people apply, but also helps to show that the council is helping people. When we've just heard in the previous paper, you know, about the timescales before we're doing large schemes, what we are actually doing as a local authority in the short term to help people. So I think it's very important. So my question is, would you be able to facilitate both these requests that I've just made?
The short answer is yes. We're very aware that local flood resilience groups are already keen, and I noticed that the paper has already been on the social media rounds through a Scottish home builders website, so that people are watching and keen to participate. So yes, subject to an agreement with them for privacy reasons, we'll get all the try and ask, certainly. And in terms of the Fife declined applications, it's one number, but some of those were more speculative applications. Some of them might have been declined for prior funding that we test for and screen out. So the aim is to assist those who haven't had help before. And then some have not had the supporting information. So there's a lot of variations as to why they've been declined within that number. But yes, we will learn. I'm trying to learn from how Fife's scheme has been implemented so that we can speed up and make ours more efficient.
Yeah, it was just, I can understand all what you said there, but if there's recurring themes, you can identify the recurring themes and you can maybe eliminate them from reoccurring in the PKC one. So thanks.
Thank you. Next question is from Councillor Harvey.
Thank you very much, Vice Convener. Councillor Chan kind of asked my question before, but I just want to kind of expand on that a little bit. I've looked at your tool to kind of screen out the various options for flood preventions. In the case where there's something unusual needs to be done, or the contractor recommends something like that as well, that's something we'd also consider as well. The tool just doesn't limit us to those specific measures.
No, it's a short list of typical type approaches. We have a specific website, we have a specific email address set up for this. And once an applicant has submitted their initial form, an application case number is set for them, and we can enter dialogue with them to advise or help clarify if we're not quite sure what they're considering. So yes, it is not an explicit list. It's not limited to.
Councillor Braun, your second question.
There we go. Thanks, Vice Convener. It's really a little bit of a follow-on from Councillor Harvey's question, if I may. Obviously, there's a contact email for applicants to speak to council, but is there a means by which we elected members can speak to somebody to run a case past them? Obviously, you can imagine or know that I've already got one in the back of my mind that I'm dealing with up here. So is there a contact that we can say, you know, this is the idea, is it feasible? Is there somebody we can contact directly to query it before we start getting applications going through and wasting people's time?
I would suggest using the exact same email address, which will be available on the website and circulated later. I can share that later because it is up and running. So, and that way the whole team will see the query. Obviously, there are limitations on the amount of capacity we have as a team to engage with all conversations, but we will, through best endeavours, assist where possible.
Is this the PFRG at PKC email address that's on the screen now? Yeah, right. Okay, fine.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Deputy Provost Parrott.
Thank you very much. If the applications are in significant numbers and they meet all the criteria, and we are faced with the option or the requirement at the moment of declining to give support because the budget is not sufficient, I'm conscious that we have in the past, as council, chosen to, if you like, reinforce success by making additional budgetary allocations. Can we put ourselves in a position with this scheme where if we do have a high level of applications, we don't decline those that, if you like, we can't fund immediately, but we put them onto a list and we can then consider as council making additional budgetary allocation to support further applications? Thanks.
Yes. No application. I mean, I would. It wouldn't be appropriate for me to turn down an application purely on that basis, but I would be keeping elected members and everybody informed as we progress through the delivery of the grant, as we fund total as we have it at the minute, such that as we get towards the end, those sort of conversations can happen and decisions made.
Thank you. It's my understanding that would have to go to FNR, but yeah, we'll see how it goes. This is great. Quick answers. Thank you all. Next is Councillor Illingworth, your second question.
Thank you. Given that we've got limited resources, and can we consider actually having a 50% grant? Because these are households who should, they have the responsibility to look after their own property, first of all. So a 50% grant, it seems to me to be more sensible than a 100% grant. What are your thoughts on that?
The challenge behind the property flood resilience grant is that experience suggests if these residents had that funding available, they would have used it, because we're looking for properties that have been affected by flooding. If they've already been affected by flooding, they are most likely already have used personal private funds for the remediation, the repair, the reinstatement. They quite often will not have any more left to put into a lot of these sort of things. So I can see where you're coming from. It is, but the council, our view is that we're trying to assist the properties that are not sitting within the typical target of the local flood risk management plans where schemes are being proposed. We know we can't protect every property through those measures. This is another opportunity to have the residents and businesses of PKC live life better.
Well, I would just like to add that I completely agree with that. And I know of people who have flooded multiple times because they have been completely unable to afford to put in what they need. So,
so supplementary, can we, you want to keep scheme simple, keep it simple. But is it possible to put in means testing given that we have limited resources?
No, to be honest, it is about keeping it simple. We did discuss that in pre-agenda, and the whole thing here is to help people who need it, and to keep it simple and to keep down our administration costs. And your last question, Councillor Braun?
Sorry, it wasn't quite quick enough there. Yeah, very simple one. It was mentioned that it's all but live and ready to go. I wonder, do we have a target date when this will actually start and become live for people, to actually go?
Technically speaking, I could ask for the website to be launched by close of play.
I think we'll stick with as soon as practical, but it's great to know that will be very, very soon, Bob. I think, are there any further questions? Oh, Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Thanks. It was just, I actually just wanted to comment. This is a really good scheme. It kind of reminds me of the energy scheme the Scottish Government launched as well too. So it's got that same simplicity to it. You mentioned in your presentation about the contractors. You obviously can't screen the contractors. Would you still be aware of the contract if like new contractor appeared to try, because I know this happened in the energy scheme, to try and suck money out the scheme for not doing the work? Would you be aware of that and warn the people applying for it, or is that not within your role, if you know what I mean?
It's not our area of expertise. We are, through the website and the associated documentation, directing the applicants to typical websites like the Blue Pages, Flood Mary, Scottish Flood Forum for advice, because they have stuff on their pages as well. And those are existing long-standing information sources. In terms of the specifics of any given contractor that an applicant picks up, obviously we ask for the quotation at the front end. We want to make sure at the end that it is the same or as close as possible. At this stage, it's difficult to say we'll have that experience-based view of the numbers that are put in front of us. That will come over time, but I will also be taking advice from other authorities that have taken this sort of approach in Scotland, Fife specifically. They will have experience of contractors in the area. It is an area of opportunity within Scotland. There's an established industry down south. So there are opportunities for those same industries to move up north of the border, or individuals to establish themselves. But there is an element of learning here for us.
Thank you. And a further question from Councillor Ling.
Thanks, Vice Convener. Maybe you'll be able to answer this. It was relating back to Councillor Illingworth's point about 50% because it's people's own responsibility. we have to treat everybody the same. And, you know, we've just talked about putting forward £42,000 to protect X amount of properties in Bridgend, but we're not asking for them to pay for 21,000 of it. So we've got to be consistent over here. And if we're going to fund it, we should be funding the individuals to the same extent as we are doing for several. So I was just wondering if you agree with that.
I was wondering how you're going to make that a question. And yeah, yes, I agree that this should absolutely be 100% available up to the 5,000. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry. If there are no further questions, I'd like to move the report. It is with very great pleasure that I propose this paper. As many of you know, I've been deeply concerned for many years about the increasing risks of flooding due to climate change. We've enjoyed some record-breaking weather this week, but many of our residents pay the price for that, including in my own ward of Perth City South. And we know it's not just the damage to property, but also the huge emotional impact and mental stress that comes to many from the fear of a wet weather forecast. In recent years, our area has experienced significant flooding, with over 1,000 flood reports recorded in the last 4 years. And while we do continue to invest in large-scale flood protection schemes, they can take time to deliver and aren't always feasible or cost-effective, as we discussed earlier, in every location. And as I said earlier, we have been waiting for years for the SNP government and COSLA to confirm funding arrangements for the councils to get on with approved risk management plans that should have been implemented in 2022 to 28, and we're now in halfway through 2026. PKC's Community Civil Contingencies team, Frank Mitchell, working with local community resilience groups like Perth Community Flood Aid, are doing a fantastic job of helping people to help themselves, but many can't afford the kit that they need to protect their property. I was delighted that my budget proposal for this £150,000 fund to help support residents and businesses at risk of flooding across Perth and Kinross was accepted in March, first by my own Lib Dem group and then incorporated into the council's budget by the SNP administration. The proposed grant scheme adds an additional important layer of resilience by supporting individual property owners to take practical steps to protect their homes and businesses. It reflects the shared responsibility for flood risk management and aligns with both our local flood risk management plans and the National Flood Resilience Strategy. As we've confirmed, the grant will provide up to £5,000 per property to support the installation of property-level flood resilience measures to help reduce damage, speed up recovery, and build long-term resilience in our communities. The approach will provide meaningful support to at least 30 properties and probably more, providing resilience for those most at risk, and complements the existing community flood resilience programmes and ensures we're taking a balanced and appropriate approach across property, community and strategic levels. I'm very grateful to Dr. Rick Haynes for bringing his experience from Fife to draw up an effective and efficient scheme, and I'm pleased that the proposals are underpinned by recognised best practice and that the appropriate governance, assessment and inspection processes are in place to ensure the effective use of public funds. I'm also grateful to all the teams across the council who've been involved, including legal, finance and communications, for pulling together so that this is ready to go as soon as we approve it, which I think is as soon as practical, just to give Rick a little bit of leeway, but we know we're nearly there. I'd also like to thank Perth Community Flood Aid, who've been helping to publicise the fund already, and I do hope that everyone can spread the word. I'm very happy to accept the recommendations in the report and move the paper for approval. And can I ask Councillor Waters to second?
Yeah, I'm absolutely delighted to second this one.
Thank you very much, Richard. Do members have any comments on the report? Yeah, oh. I think Councillor Councillor Broad has a comment. Councillor Chan had his hand up first.
Thank you, Vice Convener. I also really welcome this report and support the Property Flood Resilience Grant. But to ensure it's a real success, I think it's really important that we continue to work with Perth Community Flood Aid and the Scottish Flood Forum and any other agencies out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Chan. I completely agree with that. We do, and I welcome the close relationships that are being built between Perth Community Flood Aid and others and the council. Councillor Braun.
Yeah, thanks, Vice Commissioner. I just really want to say the same thing. Fully support this. I think it's an excellent idea. We have obviously a situation with flooding. Not all of it's large. It's sometimes very localized, and we know that the infrastructure we have, drains, sewers, ditches, are just not built to take the flow of water that is around now. So anything that can help householders, I think, and businesses is a welcome thing to have. So I think it's a good thing to go ahead. My only criticism, perhaps, is I just hope we have enough money in the fund to cater for all the applications, which I suspect we will have come through. So very much supportive, and well done to you, Liz, for bringing this forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bob. I hope when we do need more money that people will be able to help us find it from somewhere. Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, I just repeating what everyone else has said. This is a pilot project, obviously, so hopefully that is successful. It goes forward. I'd just like to thank you. It was a really good report, very well written, but also a simple process for people to apply to, which is what we always want. So thanks very much to everybody, including Liz and Richard.
Thank you. I don't think there are any further comments. So can we please approve the report? And now I'll hand back to Councillor Waters for the last paper.
Thank you, Liz, for that. Just moving now on to a final item today. Can I introduce Hannah Wilson, and Irene's back at the top of the table as well. Hannah's the Climate Change Land Restoration Officer and does a lot of work throughout the whole of Perth and Kinross within her role. Can I over to you, Hannah, to introduce the Nature Restoration Fund 26-27.
Thank you, Convener. So this report sets out a proposed approach for the use of the Scottish Government's Nature Restoration Fund for 2026 to 2027. So we have received 147,000 in capital funding for this year, and revenue funding is coming, but it's still to be confirmed what allocation we're getting. So the report seeks early approval of a clear framework and priorities to ensure the Council is fully prepared to respond quickly and deliver the funding effectively. The proposed approach builds on 5 years of successful delivery, during which over 1.1 million has supported more than 80 projects across Perth and Kinross. It focuses on addressing key gaps in current funding, particularly small-scale woodland creation and woodland restoration, while maintaining flexibility to support wider nature restoration priorities. Early approval will enable proactive engagement with partners, timely communication with applicants, and readiness to deliver projects within critical seasonal windows. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Do we have any questions? No. This is what happens when you're at the end of the agenda, Hannah. Apologies for that. I'll move the report. Just a huge thanks for this. I think this nature restoration and all the other stuff we do nature, but from this perspective is a huge benefit in the work that goes into just getting this right, so we can have the maximum impact from a nature perspective throughout the whole of Perth and Kinross is essential. And what we don't often see as councillors is the hard work that goes in behind the scenes to make that happen. Nature restoration is essential to addressing the biodiversity and climate crises. and to supporting resilient communities, sustainable land use and wider environment across Perth and Kinross. The Nature Restoration Fund provides a valuable opportunity to deliver targeted action that supports these outcomes at a local level. The Council recognises the importance of taking a planned and strategic approach to the use of this funding, ensuring alignment with existing priorities and partnership working across the whole region. Early approval of the proposed framework will allow us to respond efficiently and maximise the impact of the funding. I note the confirmation of 147,000 in capital funding for the coming year, and that revenue funding is still to be confirmed. I welcome the proactive approach taken to prepare in advance of full funding clarity. I'm happy to accept the recommendations for the report and move the paper for approval. Liz, can I ask if you will second that?
Happy to second.
Do we have any comments on the report? Andrew?
Thank you very much, Convener. No questions on the report. I'm thoroughly behind it and wholeheartedly welcome it. And if we can, in a smaller way, encourage schemes, smaller but similar to the Borders Forest Trust, which I'm very familiar with, then I think we'll be certainly heading in the right direction. I think the Borders Forest Trust, where they've worked in Dumfries and Galloway, have made huge changes and for the benefit of the area that's in. And if we can seek to replicate that here, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Ken?
Yeah, similarly, I want to just thank you. The report again is very good. It shows the right direction. It's written in a kind of easy to read, non-technical way, which is good as well too. And to go with the Deputy Provost Arrett, copying what happens in Galloway and that type of thing, we're definitely in the right direction. So thanks very much for your hard work. It's appreciated.
Thanks, Ken. No, any more comments? Let's see any. If there's any amendments, can we agree the recommendation of the report? And just thank you all for your attendance. Sorry, it was quite a lengthy agenda this afternoon, but I'm sure you agree that the items were worthwhile, and it was thanks for your participation in that. I know some people have got LRF this afternoon, so thank you.